Nazi salutes performed on steps of Victorian Parliament at protest over transgender rights.
Here's a summary of the article.
About 30 people from the National Socialist Movement marched along Spring Street on Saturday afternoon, repeatedly performing the salute at the anti-transgender rights rally. They also held signs calling transgender people offensive names, while British anti-trans activist Kelly J. Keane Minshall spoke to the crowd. Neo-Nazis clashed with transgender rights supporters outside Parliament House in Melbourne on Saturday. The pro-trans protesters held signs that included messages such as, "Trans lives over TERF hate," and, "Women aren't defined by their bodies." Police, including mounted officers, worked to keep the two groups separated. The Victorian opposition condemned the actions of some protesters, saying there was no space in society for neo-Nazism. Transgender rights supporters at a protest in Melbourne on Saturday.
This post received a score of 8,000, with an upvote ratio of 92%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
As a German, I always wonder, do all these non-German neo-Nazis have their genealogy in order to think that ideology would end up well for them? Anyway, assholes do asshole things and should rather go into a monastery to rethink their life that brought them to do fascist salutes to rail against things that do not affect them.
Mate, there's a Nazi movement in fucking Per? Where like 90% population is native descendants. They don't need to make sense, they're Nazis.
Hey, maybe they're just Nazis because they agree with Hitler when it comes to the Autobahn.
I've asked it before and I've never really found a good answer. But how do you unironically do Nazi salutes and not think, am I the bad guy?
Because they think the Nazis were right. They believe in the stuff.
Yeah, it's a cult basically of brainwashed people thinking that the Aryan race was designed by God to be the only one.
No. Victoria is quite clearly not better than this.
Obviously the Liberal MPs don't want to denounce the people marching with the neo-Nazis.
Especially since one of their own member, Moria Deeming, stood alongside them.
The beauty of this, if there is one, is that we get to see Nazis publicly exposing themselves for who they are. Let the sunshine disinfect them.
Conversely, by being so public and blatant, other would-be Nazis or sympathizers will feel emboldened. If this behavior is not adequately denounced and curbed, then it is implicitly acceptable behavior.
If you find yourself on the same side as literal Nazis, that may be a sign you need to reevaluate your opinions. Edit. All the comments trying to make excuses, like, they showed up uninvited, are fucking hilarious, BTW. ?
Far-right not being Nazis challenge. Impossible.
Greater than British anti-trans activist Kelly J. Keane Minshall spoke to the crowd. Sorry Australia, not all of us are wankers.
An estimated 90% of anti-trans stuff I hear comes from the UK though. It's a very big political movement there.
Despite being a tiny charity, they ended up representing queer people at the last Tory conference against concerns raised by their own LGBTQ advocate group. Protections for trans people have been stalled or eroded for decades. It's now that it's needed the most when trans people are being harassed, assaulted and killed. Funding and support is being pumped into these hate groups by political figures looking for a wedge topic to disguise their bullshit, anti-woman religious groups and misguided fantasy authors spouting nonsense, who have more money than sense. The US is in a much worse position with entire states banning the existence or expression of trans people. Anti-drag laws are vague enough to be used to fine and arrest trans people on the street, and hormone treatments have been banned entirely for kids and adults in some cases.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.